Hello, and welcome to another Helping with a Spoonful of History. Today we are going to conclude our lecture on the American Revolution with part 3, I Declare, Declaration of Independence through the Treaty of Paris. So we're going to start off at the summer, basically, of 1776. And this is the Second Continental Congress. Like the First Continental Congress, it was held in Philadelphia, but this time you have to realize this is a secret meeting because the war had broken out a year before at Lexington and Concord. So the men that are meeting here, they are wanted men. And if the British knew that they were meeting there, it would be very easy for them to come and basically arrest them. These are all wanted men, as I said before. All 13 colonies, including Georgia, will show up, and their number one priority is to discuss what is going on. They're not quite there yet to separate from Britain. However, the consensus is they're heading towards independence. One of the first things that they do is appoint George Washington to be the Supreme Commander of the Continental Army, and Richard Henry Lee will stand up on July 2nd, 1776, and issue a resolution to declare independence. And this is really where the real fireworks begin, is July 2nd. After that, Thomas Jefferson and 4 other men called the Committee of Five were appointed to basically write the Declaration of Independence, which was a summation of all of the thoughts, the ideas, the rhetoric that was very popular during that period of time, that were on people's minds from the age of reason. And it's nothing new, but what Thomas Jefferson, being the youngest man, 33-year-old, he was chosen to write this because he was absolutely wonderful with the pen and was a brilliant writer and was able to put this all into one single voice. And on July 4th, it is presented to the Congress and will be adopted with revisions. And will become an important document. Really, the Declaration of Independence is what the blood, bones, and sinew of what America stands for, even to this day. So, when we look at this, I like to call this the Pokeball of the Declaration of Independence, because there are key principles in which the Declaration of Independence in America stands upon. And the first is this idea of natural rights. When we think of natural rights, we're going to think about, and I want you guys to remember this guy's name, John Locke, okay? Now, John Locke, he is the natural rights guy. Life, liberty, and property. But remember, Jefferson changes this word to happiness. Because one is the idea of property. You have to realize that our founding fathers didn't think of happiness as being sort of a state of being or a feeling. It is a way of pursuing one's passions, one's ideas, being able to practice one's religion freely. That is the true essence of happiness, is being the master of your own person. And he did not want to further perpetuate the institution of slavery, so he took the idea of property out and turned it into happiness. The next big issue is this idea of self-government. That government is instituted among men, deriving their power from the consent of the governed, okay, and that the only reason that they have government is to protect those natural rights as set forth by John Locke. And if a government can't protect those rights, then it is the right and the responsibility of the people to rise up and rebel and to cast off that old government to put a new one in. Those are the ideas that they had been taught about since the Great Awakening, and these are the ideas that were taught during the Age of Reason, the Enlightenment, and have come over and on everybody's minds in the colonies when they look at the United Kingdom or Great Britain and what they're doing to America. The idea also is equality. Now, this does not mean the same. It means that we are a system of laws, a country of laws, much like the Roman Republic, in that we are judged according to the law and not according to social status, wealth, money, or race or gender. And so that is the idea. And the one big thing that is left out is the idea of slavery. You have to realize, out of 13 colonies, 5 or 6 of them have the institution of slavery, and it's become such a big, important part of their economy that they just naturally kind of just ignored slavery to try to bind the 13 colonies together to fight the American Revolution. And they generally, most of them, even Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, who did not believe in slavery, yet they owned slaves, kind of hoped the whole institution would go away, that it would become obsolete one day. Now, when we look at the idea of natural rights, equality, and self-government, this is embodied by a guy named Thomas Paine, who was an English philosopher, writer, and thinker who really won the admiration of Benjamin Franklin when he was over in England. And when Benjamin Franklin brought him over to the United States, he put all of these thoughts into a pamphlet called Common Sense. And it was so widely published, it was second only to the Bible during this period of time. And everybody who was anybody, if you were talking in the coffee shops, in the pubs, on the streets, you were talking about Thomas Paine, Common Sense, and what his beliefs were. Now, Thomas Paine's pamphlet, remember, Common Sense, helped convince colonists to do what? Arm militia, raise taxes, separate from Britain, or petition King George III of England for peace. And I hope you got the right answer, which would be C. The pamphlet Common Sense was important in that it, A, tried to assure King George that the colonists wanted peace, convince many Americans to declare independence, establish self-government in America, or influence ideas found in the Declaration of Independence. This one's a little bit harder. You would obviously go to B, but the most correct answer would be D. The Declaration of Independence drew on the ideas found in the Magna Carta and what the Mayflower Compact, Great Awakening, Proclamation Act, or the English Bill of Rights. And the correct answer would be the English Bill of Rights. So the Declaration of Independence is broken up into 4 main parts, and as I told you guys in class, basically it is a beautifully written, glorified breakup letter. In the first paragraph, the introduction paragraph, is called preamble. This is where the beautiful flowery language, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve their political bands with another. It basically states to the world what our intentions are, and that we as an independent country, as people of Great Britain, deserve rights, and that we are going to basically break up with Great Britain. The next 2 paragraphs are the grievances. These are the things that Great Britain did against America, and we wanted to state them and tell the world everything Great Britain did. And those in the first 2 paragraphs is always start with for or he, okay, and they are literally connected to actual events, like he at this time is sending large bodies of troops, hired soldiers, these referring to the Hessians, the German mercenaries. He refers to the Quartering Act, the Declaratory Act, the Intolerable Acts. And so all of those things in the 2 middle paragraphs are actually connected to connected to actual events in history. And then the last thing is the conclusion of the Declaration of Independence, and that basically says we are of right and ought to be free, and that we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And like I said, the Declaration of Independence is really what America stands for. This is what we are founded on and what we stand for, and what makes America exceptional. And our idea of American exceptionalism is that we constantly strive to bring all walks of life into the fold of this Declaration of Independence. And America, like any other nation, has fallen short, but we don't ignore that. We stand up and we continue to strive to allow this dream to become a reality for all. And that's really what makes America exceptional. So the preamble to the Declaration of Independence states that people who wish to form a new country has to A, go to war, B, be white landowning men, C, post a notice in the newspaper, or explain the reasons why to do so. And the correct answer is D. What tradition did Jefferson draw upon as he wrote the Declaration of Independence? Was it the Constitution, idea of limited government, ideas of Thomas Hobbes, or Parliament? And this one's a little bit difficult, and I hope you chose B as in boy. Which philosopher influenced Jefferson in forming the ideas? Was it Locke, Paine, Williams, or Patrick Henry? And the most correct answer would be A, John Locke, the natural rights guy. So, when we look at advantages and disadvantages to the American Revolution for both the Patriots and the Americans, both sides have their strengths and both sides have their weaknesses. In the American Patriots, their strength really is the leadership of George Washington. Now, he wasn't, I would say, one of America's best generals that we've ever had, but where his true genius lie is that he was a natural-born leader. He inspired his men. He brought out the best in his men. And that truly is a big advantage for Americans. The next thing is we had the home court advantage. We were fighting on our own home turf, and we were going to fight harder to protect our homeland than somebody else's. So that's another big advantage. We believed in our cause. The Americans believed in their cause. Patriot women who acted at helping with supplies, nursing, acting as spies. George Washington had an amazing spy network, and some even insinuate that it wasn't that George Washington outsmarted British soldiers and British generals. He outspied them. He had an absolutely brilliant spy network, and in fact, that's where invisible ink is kind of created during this period of time. They traveled with the armies. They helped inspire the men, keep civility among the men, keep them clean, fed, and healthy. And the style of fighting, this is a big thing because Americans, we did not fight on British terms. We reinvented war. We fought in an unconventional style. They basically were snipers. They shot at military officers, which was unheard of at that time. They killed Native American Indian guides. And they didn't fight, according to the British, they didn't fight fair. But there really is no fair in war. In America, we reinvented the style of war that we really learned from Native American Indians during the French and Indian War. Now, on the British side of things, 50,000 loyalists in America is a big advantage, including Benjamin Franklin's oldest son, who was a loyalist and actually after the war will go back to England. They are the strongest army and navy in the world. They are then the world's superpower. Okay, so that's a biggie. They are incredibly wealthy, so they were able to supply soldiers with state-of-the-art weapons, but also they were able to hire soldiers. The German Hessians, who George Washington surprised on Christmas night, those are German mercenaries, German soldiers, okay? They outnumbered Americans at least 3-1, but because of America's fighting style over here, that is a big equalizer. Okay, next what we'll do is we'll go to disadvantages. So when you look at a patriot disadvantages, you have basically American soldiers who are really young, inexperienced. They had no training, formal training as soldiers. It's not until Valley Forge when Baron von Steuben comes over from Prussia, which no longer exists today, that he trained them and disciplined them and made them into fighting men and fighting soldiers. America had no navy. There was very little money and supplies to feed their soldiers, so a lot of them left the military when their notices were up. They did not want to re-up. And those 50,000 loyalists, that was a big disadvantage for Americans. On the British side, they were fighting for the king. They weren't true believers. They could care less about what was going on. They just were far away from home. Their fighting style was old and antiquated. They couldn't keep up with the guerrilla warfare, and oftentimes the climate and geography of America was so confusing and overwhelming. Even General Burgoyne at Saratoga was completely and hopelessly lost and had to surrender. So those are some major disadvantages for the British in the American Revolution. So the last thing I like to talk about are the last couple things I like to talk about are the battles. Now, in 5th grade, you talked quite a bit about and learned quite a bit about the different battles, but I want to focus on 3. The first one is the Battle of Saratoga, which is considered the most significant thing. It is the turning point of the American Revolution. This is where General Burgoyne lands in Canada, and his job was to basically hike down from Canada through New York and meet basically the British troops in New York City, basically cutting America in two between the New England colonies and the southern colonies. And once they're divided, basically divide and conquer. The only problem is he was hunted down by American guerrilla warfare, and Native American Indians who were his guides were basically killed until they all just left. Burgoyne basically gets lost in the forest and winds up surrendering, and it is from here, this win, that the French and the Spanish decide to come in and help America fight the war. Valley Forge is not a battle. It is where Washington spends the winter, and with the help of von Steuben, he will train his army, keep them together, unite them as one. He will also inoculate or make them immune for smallpox, which we talked about in class. And at the very end of that winter, when spring arrived, his troops were trained, disciplined, and actually healthy compared to British troops at that time. So this was a major a success for George Washington and his army in preparing to launch further attacks and engage in further warfare to hopefully end the American Revolution. And then the last one that I want to talk about is when Cornwallis is surrounded by American troops as well as the French Navy on the peninsula of Virginia at Yorktown. And it is here that Cornwallis will officially surrender to George Washington. And even though the war does carry on for another year or so, it marks an end to the war. This is where King George will decide, okay, we need to meet and negotiate peace. The war is pretty much over. Why did some European countries decide to help? Is it because the Patriots began to win, the boycott was effective, they believed in their cause, or all of the above? The biggest thing is they believed in their cause. The Patriots began to win. It's not that they believed in their cause. They wanted to weaken Great Britain. That was what they really wanted to do. What battle marked the turning point in the American Revolution? It would be Saratoga, B. Now, the official end of the American Revolution is the Treaty of Paris. And the Treaty of Paris officially recognizes America as an independent and free country. And it is here that the U.S. will gain all the land east of the Mississippi River, and some of the unintended consequences is women will basically look to fight for more rights and and demand more rights and legal as well as political, as well as France will be inspired to start their own revolution. So this is the end of Chapter 2, The American Revolution, Part 3 of the 3-part series. I hope this helps, and I look forward to next time when we get into the Articles of Confederation, Chapter 3. And until next time.